Ricky Richardson stood atop the smoldering ruins of the Terrian capital, his human forces victorious despite overwhelming odds. The alien world, once thought impregnable, had fallen to Earth's superior technology and tactics. As the dust settled, Ricky faced an unexpected challenge. Custom dictated he must take the defeated King Zorn's two wives as his own. The human commander's mind raced as he processed this development. He had led the assault on the Terrian homeworld, employing advanced weaponry and strategic brilliance to overcome the alien defenses. Now, standing in the captured royal palace, he found himself thrust into a role he never anticipated. Queen Lyra and Queen Vela, the former king's wives, stood before him. Their exotic features were a mix of beauty and barely concealed contempt. Ricky knew their acceptance was crucial for maintaining stability on the newly conquered planet, but he could sense their resentment simmering beneath the surface. King Zorn, now defeated and stripped of his power, formally surrendered the planet to human control. His voice carried a hint of bitterness as he explained the Caterian tradition to Ricky. "The conqueror must take responsibility for the royal family," Zorn stated, his eyes darting between Ricky and his former wives. "This includes claiming the king's wives as your own." Ricky hesitated, aware of the diplomatic implications. Refusing could jeopardize human control over this strategically valuable world. With a deep breath, he nodded his acceptance, sealing his fate as both conqueror and reluctant husband to alien royalty. As news of the Caterian homeworld's fall spread across the galaxy, other alien races took notice. Humanity's defeat of the Caterians, long respected as formidable warriors, sent shockwaves through interstellar politics. Earth's government hailed Ricky as a hero, even as they grappled with the complex situation he now faced. Unbeknownst to Ricky, his troubles were just beginning. In the chaos of the invasion, Orion, a high-ranking Terrian military officer and close confidant of the former king, had escaped capture. From the shadows, he began organizing a resistance movement, viewing Ricky's acceptance of the queens as a grave insult to Caterian culture. Meanwhile, Queens Lyra and Vela, forced into marriage with their world's conqueror, began plotting ways to undermine Ricky's rule and restore Caterian independence. Their outward compliance masked a determination to reclaim their planet from human control. Ricky now found himself in a precarious position. As the newly appointed planetary governor and royal consort, he had to navigate the treacherous waters of Caterian politics, manage a potentially hostile populace, and maintain human control over the planet. The fate of human-Terrian relations and the balance of power in the galaxy rested on his shoulders. As he gazed out over the alien landscape, Ricky knew the real battle was just beginning. He had conquered a planet, but winning the hearts and minds of its people, and his new wives, would prove to be his greatest challenge yet. As the dust settled over the Terrian capital, Ricky Richardson found himself thrust into a role he never anticipated. The human commander, now planetary governor and reluctant husband to two alien queens, stood in the royal palace's grand strategy room, surrounded by holographic displays of the planet's surface. "Sir, we've secured the spaceport and major industrial centers," reported Captain Chen, her voice tinged with fatigue. "But we're spread thin." Ricky nodded, his eyes fixed on a pulsing red dot representing a recent attack on a human outpost. "Increase patrols in Sector 7. We can't afford to lose ground there." As he issued orders, Ricky felt the weight of his new responsibilities pressing down on him. The conquest had been swift, but maintaining control over an alien world proved far more challenging. In the adjacent chamber, Queens Lyra and Vela sat in tense silence, their every movement monitored by vigilant human guards. Lyra, her iridescent scales shimmering in the artificial light, watched Ricky with a mixture of curiosity and contempt. Vela, on the other hand, kept her gaze fixed on the floor, her tail twitching with barely suppressed anger. Days turned into weeks as Ricky worked tirelessly to establish human governance. He pored over reports of Terrian bureaucrats deliberately misinterpreting orders and slowing down processes. In response, he implemented a new system, pairing human advisors with cooperative Terrians. "We need to streamline the resource allocation process," Ricky explained to a group of human and Caterian officials. "I want joint teams working on this immediately." As he spoke, he noticed the subtle exchange of glances between some Caterian officials. Their resistance was passive but palpable. Meanwhile, beyond the city's boundaries, Orion and his band of rebels struck with precision. Human supply convoys went up in flames, and communication relays were sabotaged under cover of darkness. Ricky stood before a tactical display, his brow furrowed as he studied the pattern of attacks. "He's using the old tunnels," he muttered, recalling intelligence reports on Qatarian infrastructure. "We need to map those systems and seal them off." As the challenges mounted, Ricky found himself increasingly drawn to the knowledge possessed by Queens Lyra and Vela. One evening, swallowing his pride, he approached their chambers. "I need your help," he said, his voice echoing in the ornate room, "to understand your people, your world." Lyra raised an eyebrow, her violet eyes studying him intently. "And why should we assist our conqueror?" Ricky met her gaze. "Because it's in the best interest of your people. Help me govern fairly, and we can avoid unnecessary suffering." A tense silence followed before Lyra nodded slowly. "Very well, we will teach you, but do not mistake this for acceptance of your rule." Over the following days, Ricky immersed himself in Tarian history and customs. He learned of their complex social hierarchies, their reverence for natural phenomena, and the intricacies of their legal system. During one such session, as Lyra explained the significance of a traditional Qatarian ceremony, Ricky found himself captivated by her passion and intelligence. For a moment, he saw beyond her alien features to the person beneath. Lyra, too, began to see Ricky in a new light. His genuine interest in Qatarian culture and his efforts to implement fair policies didn't go unnoticed. One evening, she approached him with a datapad in hand. "I have proposals," she said, her voice low, "for reforms in education and healthcare. Will you consider them?" Ricky took the datapad, surprised and intrigued. "Of course, I'll review them immediately." As Ricky worked to stabilize the planet, implementing a fair rationing system and addressing infrastructure issues, he faced opposition from an unexpected quarter. Colonel Marcus Steele, newly arrived from Earth, stormed into Ricky's office. "Governor, your approach is too soft," Steele growled. "We need to crack down on these aliens, show them who's in charge." Ricky stood his ground. "We're here to govern, Colonel, not to oppress. My methods are working." The tension between them grew, mirroring the larger conflict between different visions for Earth's expansion into space. This conflict came to a head when Ricky discovered plans from Earth-based corporations to strip-mine Qatarian resources. In a controversial move, he halted these initiatives, earning the ire of powerful corporate interests. "Do you realize what you're doing?" shouted a holographic representation of a corporate executive. "Those resources are vital to Earth's economy." Ricky stood firm. "And destroying this planet's ecosystem is vital to no one. We'll find sustainable ways to utilize resources, or not at all." As pressure mounted from all sides, Ricky found solace in late-night strategy sessions with Queen Lyra. Their discussions ranged from governance issues to philosophical debates about the nature of interspecies relations. One night, as they pored over maps of rebel activity, Ricky noticed Lyra's hand brush against his. The touch sent an unexpected jolt through him, and he looked up to find her gazing at him with an unreadable expression. The moment was shattered by an alarm blaring through the palace. Orion's forces had launched a daring raid on a weapons depot, making off with advanced Earth weaponry. As Ricky rushed to coordinate the response, he caught sight of Queen Vela watching him and Lyra with narrowed eyes. The complex web of personal and political relationships threatened to unravel at any moment. Amidst this chaos, Ricky received word that a delegation from Earth would soon arrive to assess the situation. As he prepared for their visit, he knew that the fate of human-Qatarian relations hung in the balance. Standing on the palace balcony, overlooking the sprawling Qatarian capital with its mix of alien spires and human military installations, Ricky took a deep breath. The challenges ahead were immense, but he was determined to find a path forward that would benefit both species. The true test of his leadership was about to begin. As Ricky prepared for the Earth delegation's imminent arrival, he knew drastic action was needed to stabilize the Qatarian homeworld. Standing before a mixed crowd of humans and Qatarians in the capital's central plaza, he unveiled his ambitious plan. "Today we begin a new chapter," Ricky announced, his voice carrying across the gathered masses. "We will rebuild this world together, human and Qatarian alike." The Public Works Initiative launched immediately. Ricky watched as teams of humans and Qatarians cleared rubble from bombed-out buildings, their differences set aside in pursuit of a common goal. The hum of machinery and chatter in multiple languages filled the air as new structures began to rise from the ashes of war. In the following weeks, Ricky spent countless hours alongside Queen Lyra, poring over reports and coordinating efforts. Their late-night strategy sessions gradually shifted from purely professional to something more personal. One evening, as they reviewed plans for a new hydroponic farm, Lyra's hand lingered on Ricky's arm. "There's something I need to show you," she said, her violet eyes meeting his. "Something that could change everything." Lyra led Ricky through a series of hidden passages deep beneath the royal palace. They emerged in a vast chamber filled with glowing data crystals and humming machinery. "This is the archive," Lyra explained, her voice filled with reverence. "The collected scientific knowledge of our people, hidden for generations." Ricky's mind raced with the possibilities. "This could revolutionize both our worlds," he breathed, reaching out to touch a crystal. Lyra caught his hand. "Which is why it must remain secret. If your people knew—" Ricky nodded, understanding the implications. "We'll study it together, find ways to help both our species without exploitation." As Ricky and Lyra delved into the archive's secrets, tensions simmered elsewhere in the palace. Queen Vela watched their growing closeness with mounting resentment. One night, she slipped away from her guards and made her way to a secure communication terminal. "Orion," she whispered into the encrypted channel, "I have information you need." Miles away in a hidden rebel base, Orion smiled as he received Vela's transmission. "At last," he muttered, calling his lieutenants together. "We have our opening." While Orion plotted his attack, Colonel Marcus Steele paced his office aboard the orbiting human command ship. He glared at reports of Ricky's soft policies. "This ends now," Steele growled, composing a message to like-minded officers planetside. "When the delegation arrives, we'll show them the real way to handle an occupied world." Amidst this web of conspiracies, a new player emerged. Dr. Alara Vox, her lab coat tattered and her scaled skin dulled from weeks in hiding, approached the palace gates. "I must speak with Governor Richardson," she insisted, her eyes wild with urgency. "It's a matter of planetary survival." Ricky met with Dr. Vox in his office, Lyra at his side. The Qatarian scientist's words chilled him to the bone. "The ancient terraforming systems are failing," Vox explained, pulling up holographic models. "If we don't act soon, this world will become uninhabitable for both our species." Ricky's mind raced. This crisis could be the key to proving the value of cooperation to the Earth delegation. He turned to Lyra, seeing the same purpose in her eyes. "We'll assemble a joint team," Ricky declared, "human and Qatarian scientists working together to save this world." Within hours, a specialized task force led by Dr. Vox departed for the planet's unstable wilderness. Ricky coordinated their efforts from the capital, using knowledge gleaned from the archive to guide their mission. As the delegation ship entered orbit, alarms blared throughout the city. Orion's forces struck with precision, targeting key defensive positions. Ricky rushed to the command center, shouting orders as he ran. "They've breached the eastern perimeter," a human officer reported, her voice tight with stress. Ricky's eyes narrowed as he studied the attack patterns. "How did they know our weakest points?" he muttered, a sickening realization dawning. His suspicions were confirmed when Queen Vela was caught trying to transmit more information to the rebels. As she was led away in restraints, her eyes locked with Ricky's. "You'll never understand our world," she hissed. "You don't belong here." With the city under siege and the delegation inbound, Ricky made a bold decision. He opened a channel to Ambassador Chen Wei's ship. "Ambassador, I'm diverting your landing to these coordinates," Ricky said, transmitting the location of the terraforming mission. "There's something you need to see firsthand." Colonel Steele's voice cut in, furious. "Richardson, you can't—" Ricky severed the connection. He turned to Lyra, who stood beside him, her presence a pillar of strength. "Are you ready?" he asked. Lyra nodded, her scales shimmering with drive. Let's show them what our people can accomplish together. As rebel forces pushed deeper into the city and Colonel Steele fumed aboard his ship, Ricky and Lyra boarded a shuttle. They raced towards the terraforming site, where human ingenuity and Tarian wisdom worked in harmony to save a world. The delegation's ship appeared on the horizon, its hull gleaming in the alien sun. Ricky took a deep breath, knowing that the next few hours would determine the fate of two civilizations. He stepped forward, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. As the delegation's ship descended through Cataria's turbulent atmosphere, nature itself seemed to challenge their arrival. A massive storm system, spawned by the unstable terraforming array, engulfed the landing zone in swirling clouds and driving rain. Ricky gripped the shuttle's controls, fighting against violent wind shear. "We need to warn them off," he shouted over the roar of the engines. "This storm's too dangerous for a landing." But before he could open a channel, a blinding flash of lightning illuminated the sky. The delegation's ship, caught in the electrical maelstrom, began a rapid, uncontrolled descent. "No!" Lyra cried, her scales paling with shock. Ricky banked hard, following the stricken vessel's trajectory. Through sheets of stinging rain, they watched as Ambassador Chen's ship made a rough emergency landing, skidding to a stop in a field of jagged rock formations. "Take us down," Dr. Vox urged, her eyes fixed on the downed ship. "We need to reach them before the storm worsens." Ricky nodded grimly, searching for a suitable landing spot. He found a small clearing and set the shuttle down with a bone-jarring thud. The moment the hatch opened, howling wind and stinging rain assaulted them. "We need to move fast," Ricky shouted, securing an emergency pack to his back. "That ship won't hold up long in this weather." They set out across the treacherous landscape, fighting against gale-force winds with every step. Jagged rocks tore at their clothing, while mudslides threatened to sweep them off their feet. Lyra stumbled, crying out as her ankle twisted on loose gravel. Ricky caught her arm, supporting her weight. "I've got you," he said, their eyes meeting for a brief moment before they pressed on. As they neared the crash site, the full extent of the damage became clear. The ship's hull was breached in multiple places, with sparks and smoke visible even through the driving rain. "Ambassador Chen," Ricky called out, approaching the mangled hatch. "Can anyone hear me?" A weak voice responded from within. "Help! We're trapped!" Ricky and Lyra worked to pry open the damaged hatch, while Dr. Vox prepared emergency medical supplies. With a screech of protesting metal, the door finally gave way. Ambassador Chen stumbled out, supporting an injured colleague. "Governor Richardson," Chen gasped, his usually immaculate suit torn and stained. "What in God's name is happening?" "The terraforming systems are malfunctioning," Ricky explained, helping more delegates from the wreckage. "We need to get you all to safety." As they worked to evacuate the ship, Ricky's communicator crackled to life. Through bursts of static, he heard fragments of a frantic message from the capital. "Governor, Steele has martial law, rebels advancing." Ricky's blood ran cold. He turned to Lyra, seeing the same fear reflected in her eyes. The situation in the city was spiraling out of control. "We need to get back," he said urgently. "But the delegation," Lyra began. Ricky shook his head. "We can't abandon them here. We need to find shelter and stabilize the injured." Dr. Vox, who had been scanning the area with a handheld device, called out over the howling wind. "There's a cave system nearby. It should provide adequate protection." With no other options, they began the arduous trek to the caves. The injured were supported between able-bodied members of the group, while Ricky and Lyra took point, searching for a safe path through the storm-ravaged terrain. As they entered the relative safety of the cave, Ambassador Chen approached Ricky. "I demand to know what's going on," he said, his voice tight with awe-inspiring anger. This was supposed to be a routine inspection, not a death-defying adventure. Ricky met the ambassador's gaze steadily. "With all due respect, sir, this is the reality of our situation on Kataria. The challenges we face here are complex and often unpredictable. That's why cooperation between our species is so crucial." Chen's expression softened slightly. "I see. Well, your actions today have certainly demonstrated your commitment to that ideal." As Dr. Vox tended to the injured, and Lyra worked to establish a makeshift command center, Ricky ventured deeper into the cave system. The beam of his flashlight played over rough stone walls, revealing intricate carvings and strange crystalline formations. "Lyra," he called out, his voice echoing in the cavern, "you need to see this." The Katarian queen joined him, her eyes widening as she took in the ancient markings. "These are from the early days of our civilization," she breathed, "before the great schism that divided our people." As they examined the artifacts, Dr. Vox's voice rang out from the cave entrance. "Governor, I've made a discovery about the terraforming system." They hurried back to find the Katarian scientist hunched over her equipment, her face grave. "The system's instability isn't just war damage," she explained. "Someone deliberately sabotaged it." The implications of this revelation hung heavy in the air. A conspiracy involving both humans and Katarians could explain the coordinated nature of the recent attacks. Ricky's communicator crackled again, this time with a clearer message. The situation in the capital had deteriorated rapidly. Colonel Steele's harsh crackdown was driving more Katarians into open rebellion, while Orion's forces were launching increasingly bold attacks. "I need to get back," Ricky said, his mind racing with possible solutions. "But I can't leave the delegation unprotected, and we need to stabilize the terraforming system." After a tense discussion with Ambassador Chen, a plan was formulated. Ricky would send a portion of his security detail back to the capital to assist in restoring order, while he remained at the site to oversee repairs and continue discussions with the ambassador. As night fell and the storm intensified, a loud crash echoed through the cave. Part of the ceiling had collapsed, forcing them to retreat deeper into the system. In the flickering light of emergency lamps, they found themselves surrounded by even more ancient Tarian artifacts. "This could be the key to understanding our shared history," Lyra said, her voice filled with wonder. "Perhaps even a way to bridge the divide between our peoples." Ricky nodded, hope kindling in his chest. But before he could respond, his communicator buzzed with an urgent message from Earth High Command. Their tone was ominous, hinting at direct intervention and the possibility of removing Ricky from his position. As dawn broke, Ricky stood at the cave entrance, watching the storm begin to subside. The challenges ahead were immense: a malfunctioning terraforming system, a city in chaos, and the threat of losing everything he'd worked for. But as he turned back to the cave, seeing humans and Katarians working side by side, he knew that the path forward lay in unity, not division. With rekindled willpower, Ricky began to formulate a plan that would bring all parties together and prevent the situation from escalating into full-scale war. The fate of two worlds hung in the balance, and time was running out. Out. The first rays of dawn painted the sky in hues of amber and rose, casting long shadows across the rugged Katarian landscape. Ricky stepped out of the cave entrance, squinting against the harsh light. The storm had finally subsided, leaving behind a deceptive calm that belied the mounting crises, threatening to tear apart everything he had worked for. Behind him, Dr. Vox emerged from the depths of the cave, her scales dull with exhaustion. "Governor," she called, her voice hoarse from a night of nonstop work. "I've managed to stabilize the terraforming systems, but there's a complication." Ricky turned, noting the grim set of her mandibles. "What kind of complication?" Dr. Vox pulled up a holographic display from her wrist device, showing a complex network of interlocking systems. "The sabotage is far more extensive than we initially thought. To fully repair the damage, we'll need to perform a complete system reset." "And the catch?" Ricky asked, already sensing the weight of another impossible decision bearing down on him. "The reset process will leave the planet vulnerable to extreme weather patterns for several hours," Dr. Vox explained, her voice tight with concern. "We're talking about potentially endangering millions of lives, both human and Katarian." Ricky's mind raced, calculating risks and potential outcomes. Before he could respond, his communicator buzzed with an incoming transmission from the capital. The voice on the other end was breathless, barely audible over the sounds of distant explosions. "Governor Richardson, the situation here has deteriorated rapidly," the officer reported. "Colonel Steele's crackdown has backfired. A group of moderate Katarian leaders have publicly denounced his actions and called for his removal." Ricky's eyes widened. How are our forces responding? That's the problem, sir. There's a growing rift. Some officers are refusing to follow Steele's more extreme orders, and now the officer's voice trailed off, replaced by a cacophony of shouts and weapons fire. Report! Ricky barked, his heart pounding. It's Orion, sir. His forces are assaulting the palace. They've breached the outer defenses. We can't hold them back much longer. The transmission cut off abruptly, leaving Ricky standing in stunned silence. The sound of footsteps behind him broke his reverie. He turned to see Ambassador Chen approaching, his normally immaculate suit still disheveled from the crash. Governor Richardson, Chen said, his voice steady despite the obvious strain of the past hours. I've been observing your actions since our arrival, and I must say, I'm impressed. The way you've handled this crisis, the cooperation between humans and Catarians, it's given me much to think about. Ricky nodded, unsure where this was leading. Thank you, Ambassador, but I'm afraid we're far from out of the woods yet. Chen's eyes gleamed with an intensity Ricky hadn't seen before. Indeed, which is why I have a proposal that might just save us all. As Chen outlined his bold idea for a joint humanitarian governing council, with Ricky at its head, alarms began blaring from Dr. Vox's equipment. The Tarian scientist rushed to her console, her scales paling as she read the data. Governor, she called out, her voice tight with urgency. Long-range sensors have detected a massive Tarian battle fleet approaching the system. They must have been hiding in the nearby nebula, waiting for an opportunity to strike. Ricky's mind reeled, struggling to process this new threat on top of everything else. The arrival of this fleet could reignite the war on a scale that would make their current struggles seem trivial in comparison. As the gravity of the situation settled over the group, Queen Lyra emerged from the cave, her regal bearing undiminished despite the dire circumstances. Her eyes met Ricky's, and in that moment, a spark of inspiration flashed between them. The terraforming reset, Ricky said slowly, the beginnings of a plan forming in his mind. Could we use it as a weapon against the approaching fleet? Dr. Vox's eyes widened as she grasped his meaning. Theoretically, yes. If we time the reset to coincide with the fleet's arrival, we could create a massive electromagnetic pulse. It would disable their ships without destroying them, potentially saving millions of lives on both sides. But the risks, Lyra began, her voice trailing off as she considered the implications, are enormous, Ricky finished for her. The pulse would affect the capital too, leaving us vulnerable to Orion's forces. And who knows what it might do to the planet's ecosystem. For a long moment, silence reigned as each of them grappled with the weight of the decision before them. Then, with a determined set to his shoulders, Ricky spoke. We don't have a choice. It's our best shot at preventing all-out war. Dr. Vox, start the modifications. Lyra, I'll need your help to coordinate with any loyalist forces left in the capital. Ambassador Chen, I need you to prepare a message for both the approaching fleet and Earth High Command. If we're going to pull this off, we'll need every advantage we can get. As the group dispersed to their tasks, Ricky felt the familiar rush of adrenaline that came with taking action. He knew the hours ahead would push him to his limits, testing not just his leadership, but his very understanding of what it meant to be human in a universe far vaster and more complex than he had ever imagined. The cave became a hive of activity, with Dr. Vox and her team working feverishly to modify the terraforming systems. Ricky and Lyra huddled over makeshift communication arrays, coordinating with the fragmented loyalist forces in the capital. Ambassador Chen, his diplomatic skills put to the ultimate test, crafted messages that walked a razor's edge between warning and conciliation. As the Tarian battle fleet drew ever closer, Ricky found himself standing at the mouth of the cave once more. The alien sun climbed higher in the sky, its harsh light illuminating a world on the brink of chaos. In the distance, he could see the shimmer of the malfunctioning terraforming fields, a reminder of both the fragility and the resilience of this adopted home. With a deep breath, Ricky turned back to the cave, ready to face whatever challenges the coming hours would bring. The fate of two worlds hung in the balance, and he was determined to see it through, whatever it takes. Ricky's finger hovered over the activation switch, his pulse racing as he prepared to unleash the electromagnetic pulse. But before he could press it, Dr. Vox burst into the control room, her scales flushed with urgency. "Stop!" she cried out, her voice cracking with strain. "We can't do this!" Ricky froze, his hand still poised above the switch. "What's wrong?" Dr. Vox's eyes were wide with fear as she explained, "I've run additional simulations. The pulse won't just disable the fleet, it'll devastate the planet's ecosystem. We're talking about irreversible damage to the biosphere, weather patterns, everything." The weight of this revelation settled over the room like a suffocating blanket. Ricky's mind raced, searching for alternatives, but he came up empty. Their one bold strategy had just crumbled to dust. In that moment of crushing uncertainty, an idea struck him. It was risky, perhaps even foolish, but it was the only option left. "Get me a direct line to that fleet," Ricky ordered, his voice steady despite the turmoil in his gut. Minutes later, Ricky found himself staring at the stern visage of Fleet Admiral Zax on the console. The Qatarian scales were a deep, battle-scarred green, his eyes glinting with barely suppressed hostility. "You have 1 minute to explain why I shouldn't reduce your pathetic colony to ash, human," Zax growled. Ricky met the Admiral's gaze unflinchingly. "Because I'm offering you something better than revenge. I'm proposing a meeting, face-to-face. You, me, Queen Lyra, and Ambassador Chen Wei. Let's end this conflict before it destroys us all." A tense silence followed, broken only by the soft beeping of consoles. Finally, Zax spoke, his voice a low rumble. "Very well. You have my curiosity, if nothing else. You may board my flagship, but know that one false move will be your last." The journey to the Tarian flagship was tense, the shuttle cutting through the vacuum of space in eerie silence. Ricky sat rigid, acutely aware of the enormity of what he was about to attempt. Beside him, Queen Lyra's presence was a steadying influence, her quiet strength bolstering his purpose. As they stepped onto the bridge of the Qatarian vessel, Ricky found himself face to face with Admiral Zax. The Qatarian towered over him, his massive frame radiating scarcely controlled aggression. "Speak quickly, human," Zax growled. "My patience wears thin." Ricky took a deep breath, then launched into his proposal. He laid out a vision of a joint human-Tarian government, a true partnership that would benefit both species. As he spoke, he could see the skepticism in Zax's eyes slowly give way to grudging interest. "You speak of cooperation," Zax rumbled, "but how can we trust you after years of conflict?" It was Queen Lyra who answered, her voice ringing clear and true across the bridge. "Because the alternative is mutual destruction. Our peoples have more in common than you realize, Admiral. We've shed enough blood. It's time to build something together instead of tearing each other apart." Ambassador Chen Wei stepped forward, his diplomatic instincts sensing the shift in the room. "This is an unprecedented opportunity, Admiral. Think of the possibilities if our species worked together instead of against each other." As the discussions continued, Ricky's communicator buzzed with an incoming transmission from the planet's surface. He listened intently, his eyes widening at the news. "There's been a coup in the capital," he announced to the group. "Colonel Steele has been overthrown. Major Sarah Thompson is now in command of human forces, and she's ordered a ceasefire. She's already begun negotiations with Orion's rebels." This news sent a ripple of surprise through the Qatarian bridge crew. Admiral Zax's expression shifted, the hard lines of his face softening almost imperceptibly. Just then, another transmission came through, this time from Dr. Vox. Her voice was filled with excitement as she relayed her findings from the ancient artifacts in the cave system. "Governor, you won't believe this," she said breathlessly. "I've found evidence of an ancient alliance between humans and Qatarians. It seems our species have worked together before, long ago. This could change everything." Ricky's mind raced with the implications of this discovery. He turned to Admiral Zax, a new fire in his eyes. "You see, cooperation between our species isn't just possible. It's part of our shared history. We have a chance to reclaim that legacy, to build something greater than either of us could achieve alone." The hours that followed were a whirlwind of negotiation, debate, and cautious hope. Slowly but surely, a framework for a new government began to take shape. Admiral Zax, his initial hostility giving way to grudging respect, agreed to stand down his fleet in exchange for a gradual withdrawal of human military forces. As the final details of the agreement were hammered out, Ricky couldn't help but feel a sense of cautious optimism. They had pulled back from the brink of disaster, forging a path towards a future that held the promise of peace. But as he looked around the room at the faces of those present, human, Katarian, and the unique fusion of the two that Queen Lyra represented, he knew that the real work was just beginning. Implementing this radical new system of governance would be a monumental task, fraught with challenges and opposition from hardliners on both sides. As they prepared to return to the planet's surface, Ricky caught Queen Lyra's eye. There was a depth of understanding in her gaze, a shared recognition of the difficult road ahead. But there was something else too, a warmth that spoke of a deepening connection between them, one that transcended the boundaries of their respective species. The shuttle ride back to the planet was filled with a mixture of exhaustion and nervous energy. As they broke through the atmosphere, Ricky could see the sprawling capital city below, still bearing the scars of recent conflict, but there were signs of life returning to the streets, of both humans and Katarians cautiously emerging to see what this new day would bring. Landing on the outskirts of the city, Ricky and his companions were met by a crowd of onlookers, some cheering, others watching with wary suspicion. As they made their way towards the government complex, Ricky could feel the weight of countless eyes upon him, each looking to him for answers, for hope, for a path forward. Inside the complex, they found Major Sarah Thompson and a group of moderate human officers in heated discussion with Orion and his rebel leaders. The atmosphere was tense, years of mistrust and conflict not easily set aside. But as Ricky began to outline the agreement reached with Admiral Zax, he could see a glimmer of possibility in their eyes. "This won't be easy," Ricky said, addressing the assembled leaders. "We're asking both sides to set aside generations of hostility and work together. But I believe it's our only path forward, our only chance to build a future worth having on this world." As the implications of the new agreement sank in, Ricky could see the myriad reactions playing out across the faces before him. Some nodded in cautious agreement, while others frowned in barely concealed disapproval. He knew that for every supporter of this new order, there would be those who saw it as a betrayal of their respective causes. The newly formed Joint Council gathered for its first unofficial meeting, the air thick with a mixture of hope and apprehension. Human and Carian representatives sat side by side, their differences stark, but their shared purpose binding them together. As discussions began on the monumental task of reintegrating Orion's rebels and Colonel Steele's hardline supporters into the new society, Ricky felt the full weight of the challenge before them. Each decision, each compromise, would be scrutinized and challenged. The path ahead was fraught with political landmines and potential pitfalls. Yet as he looked around the room, seeing humans and Tarians engaged in earnest dialogue, Ricky felt a spark of hope. They had taken the first steps towards a new future, a future that held the promise of unity, of shared prosperity, and of a peace hard-won but all the more valuable for it. As the meeting adjourned and the council members filed out, Ricky found himself standing alone with Queen Lyra. In the quiet of the empty chamber, he felt a connection with her that transcended words. Their shared experiences, the trials they had faced together, had forged a bond that defied easy categorization. "We've got our work cut out for us," Ricky said softly, his voice tinged with both exhaustion and dedication. Lyra nodded, her luminous eyes meeting his. "Indeed we do, but I believe we're equal to the task." As they stood there, the weight of their responsibilities heavy upon them, Ricky knew that the real test was just beginning. The fragile peace they had brokered would face threats from all sides, from those who feared change, from those who thrived on conflict, and from the sheer complexity of merging two vastly different societies. But as he looked at Lyra, at the strength and wisdom she embodied, Ricky felt ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Together, they would navigate the treacherous waters of interspecies politics, working to build a future that honored the best of both their peoples. With a shared nod of understanding, Ricky and Lyra turned to leave the chamber, ready to begin the monumental task of shaping this new, unified society. The future was uncertain, filled with both promise and peril, but they would face it together, one step at a time. As Ricky and Lyra left the council chamber, they were immediately confronted by a commotion in the main hallway. A group of sharply dressed humans pushed their way through the crowd, led by a tall man with steely gray eyes and an impeccably tailored suit. "Governor Richardson," the man called out, his voice carrying an air of authority. "I'm Marcus Blackwell, CEO of Terran Resource Enterprises. We need to talk." Ricky tensed, recognizing the name of one of Earth's most powerful corporate conglomerates. He exchanged a quick glance with Lyra before addressing Blackwell. "Mr. Blackwell, this is unexpected. Perhaps we could schedule a meeting." "This can't wait," Blackwell interrupted, his tone brooking no argument. "We have contracts with Earth's government that grant us unrestricted access to this planet's resources. I'm here to ensure those contracts are honored." The hallway fell silent, all eyes on Ricky. He could feel the weight of the moment, knowing his response would set a precedent for how the new joint government would deal with external pressures. "I'm afraid that's not possible, Mr. Blackwell," Ricky said firmly. "This planet is now under joint human-Catarian governance. Any pre-existing contracts will need to be renegotiated with the full council." Blackwell's eyes narrowed. "You don't have the authority to—" "He speaks for us all," Queen Lyra interjected, her voice calm but steely. "The resources of this world are not yours to claim." The corporate delegation bristled, but Blackwell held up a hand to quiet them. His gaze swept from Ricky to Lyra, a calculating look in his eyes. "This isn't over, Governor. We'll be in touch." With that, he turned on his heel and strode away, his entourage following close behind. As the group disappeared around a corner, Ricky let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. "That's going to be trouble," he muttered. Lyra nodded, her expression grave. "Indeed, but we knew challenges would come. We must stand firm." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Admiral Zax, his massive frame filling the doorway of a nearby conference room. "Governor, Queen Lyra, a word please." Inside the room, Admiral Zax wasted no time getting to the point. "I've reviewed Queen Lyra's proposal for integrating our military forces," he rumbled. "While I see the potential benefits, I have serious concerns about security risks." Lyra leaned forward, her eyes intense. "Admiral, I understand your reservations, but this integration is crucial for building trust between our peoples. We cannot hope to govern together if we cannot fight together." "And what happens when our shared military secrets fall into the wrong hands?" Zax countered. "We've been enemies for too long to simply open our arms wide." Ricky listened to the back and forth, his mind racing. He could see both sides of the argument, and he knew that finding a middle ground would be essential for the alliance's success. "What if we start small?" Ricky suggested. "Joint training exercises, limited technology sharing. We build trust gradually, with safeguards in place." Admiral Zax's scaled brow furrowed as he considered the proposal. After a long moment, he gave a curt nod. "A trial period then, but at the first sign of a security breach, we pull back." As they left the meeting, Ricky's communicator buzzed. It was Major Sarah Thompson, her voice tight with urgency. "Governor, we have a situation. Orion's rebels are refusing to disarm. We're getting reports of armed groups gathering in the outlying regions." Ricky's stomach clenched. He had hoped the promise of peace would be enough to bring the rebels into the fold, but it seemed old hatreds died hard. "What about Orion himself?" "No sign of him," Sarah reported. "Intel suggests he's rallying support in the remote areas, possibly planning some kind of insurgency." Ricky made a quick decision. "Form a joint task force. I want you leading it, along with—" He paused, considering, then remembered a capable Tarian officer he'd met during the negotiations. "Captain Krell, find Orion, bring him in peacefully if you can. We need to end this before it spirals out of control." As he ended the call, Ricky noticed Dr. Alara Vox hurrying towards him, her eyes bright with excitement. "Governor, I've made an incredible discovery in the artifacts. There's evidence of a lost Catarian colony on a nearby planet. The technology there could be revolutionary." Ricky's mind raced with the possibilities. A joint expedition to this lost colony could be exactly what they needed to unite humans and Catarians in a common goal. As he opened his mouth to respond, the lights in the hallway flickered and died. Emergency generators kicked in moments later, bathing the corridor in a red glow. Alarms began to blare throughout the complex. "What's happening?" Ricky demanded, reaching for his communicator. Before anyone could answer, an explosion rocked the building, sending tremors through the floor. Smoke began to fill the air, and the sound of panicked shouts echoed from nearby rooms. "We're under attack," Queen Lyra said, her voice unnaturally calm in the chaos. "But by whom?" As if in answer, Ricky's communicator crackled to life. It was Detective Zara, a Qatarian investigator he'd worked with during the peace negotiations. "Governor, we have multiple reports of sabotage across the city. Power grids, communication systems, food production facilities, all hit simultaneously." Ricky's mind whirled as he tried to process the information. This was no random attack. It was too well coordinated, too precisely targeted. But who could be behind it? Human extremists? Qatarian hardliners? Or something else entirely? "Zara, I need you to lead the investigation," Ricky said, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. "Coordinate with both human and Qatarian security forces. Find out who's behind this." As he ended the call, Ricky looked at the faces around him. Lyra, Dr. Vox, the various council members who had gathered in the hallway. He saw fear, purpose, and uncertainty reflected in their eyes. "This is a direct attack on everything we've built," Ricky said, his voice carrying over the din of alarms and distant explosions. "But we will not let it break us. We'll find those responsible and bring them to justice. Together." As the words left his mouth, Ricky knew they were more than just a rallying cry. They were a promise, one he intended to keep despite the toll. The road ahead would be fraught with danger, but as he met Queen Lyra's steady gaze, he felt a surge of purpose. Whatever forces were arrayed against them, whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them united. The future of two worlds depended on it. As the alarms continued to blare, Ricky's communicator lit up with a flurry of incoming messages. He quickly scrolled through them, his face growing grim with each passing second. "It's worse than we thought," he announced to the group gathered around him. "We're getting reports of coordinated attacks across the planet. Power grids, communication networks, transportation hubs, all hit simultaneously." Queen Lyra's luminous eyes widened in shock. Who could have the resources and audacity to launch such a widespread assault? Before Ricky could respond, Admiral Zax burst into the hallway, his massive frame filling the doorway. "Governor, Your Majesty, we need to convene the Joint Council immediately. This is a full-scale crisis." Within minutes, the council chamber was filled with a tense mix of human and Qatarian leaders. Holographic displays flickered to life, showing real-time updates of the chaos unfolding across the planet. Cities plunged into darkness, transport systems ground to a halt, and panicked citizens flooded the streets. Ricky stood at the head of the table, his voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. "We're implementing a planet-wide state of emergency. Admiral Zax, I need you to coordinate our combined security forces, prioritize protecting vital facilities, and restoring essential services." As the council members rushed to carry out their assignments, Detective Zara burst into the room, her antennae twitching with agitation. "Governor, I have critical information," she said, her voice tight with urgency. "We've uncovered evidence linking these attacks to Terran resource enterprises." A hush fell over the room as the implications sank in. Ricky's mind flashed back to his confrontation with Marcus Blackwell just hours earlier. "It seems Mr. Blackwell wasn't content to wait for a meeting," he said, his voice filled with cold anger. Queen Lyra stepped forward, her regal bearing a calming presence in the chaos. "This act of aggression cannot go unanswered. We must take swift action against these corporate interests." Ricky nodded in agreement. "Detective Zara, I want every scrap of evidence you have. We'll use this to build a case against Blackwell and his organization. In the meantime, we focus on containment and recovery." As the council dispersed to handle their respective tasks, Ricky's communicator buzzed again. It was Dr. Ilara Vox, her voice breathless with excitement despite the crisis. "Governor, you won't believe what we've found. The expedition to the Lost Colony, we've made a breakthrough." Ricky listened intently as Dr. Vox described the ancient Qatarian outpost discovered beneath the surface of a nearby moon. The potential of the advanced technology they were uncovering could be game-changing, not just for dealing with the current crisis, but for the future of both species. "Keep me updated on your findings, Dr. Vox," Ricky said. "This could be exactly what we need to turn the tide." As he ended the call, Major Sarah Thompson's voice crackled over the communicator. "Governor, we've located Orion's hideout, but sir, it's not what we expected. Orion and his top lieutenants are being held captive by human mercenaries. We believe they're working for Blackwell." Ricky's mind raced with the implications. "Can you extract them safely?" "Affirmative," Thompson replied. "Captain Krell and I are formulating a rescue plan now. We'll keep you posted." Hours passed in a blur of activity. Ricky coordinated efforts from the command center, watching as slowly but surely, order began to return to the cities. Human and Katarian security forces worked side by side, their previous animosities forgotten in the face of a common enemy. As dawn broke over the Katarian capital, Ricky received word that Thompson and Krell's mission had been successful. Orion and his allies were safe, and to Ricky's surprise, the rebel leader had agreed to support the Joint Council in exchange for amnesty for his followers. Just as Ricky was processing this unexpected turn of events, a priority transmission from Earth came through. The holographic image of the UN Secretary-General materialized before him. "Governor Richardson," the Secretary-General began, her face grave, "in light of recent events, Earth's government has decided to take decisive action. We're issuing arrest warrants for Marcus Blackwell and his associates on charges of crimes against humanity and interstellar peace. You have our full backing to apprehend these individuals and bring them to justice." Ricky felt a surge of relief at the news. With Earth's support secured, they could finally move against Blackwell and his organization. "Thank you, Madam Secretary. We'll take it from here." Within hours, a planet-wide manhunt was underway. Human and Tarian law enforcement worked in tandem, sharing resources and intelligence as they closed in on Blackwell and his co-conspirators. The operation was a testament to the newfound cooperation between the two species. The chase came to a head in the heart of the capital city. Blackwell, cornered in a corporate high-rise, made a desperate bid for freedom. Ricky watched from a command shuttle as the corporate mogul launched himself from the building's roof in an experimental personal aircraft. "Don't let him escape," Ricky ordered, his heart pounding as he watched the craft weave erratically through the city's skyline. But Blackwell's desperation proved to be his undoing. The untested aircraft, pushed beyond its limits, began to malfunction as it climbed higher into the atmosphere. Ricky and the others watched in stunned silence as the craft spiraled out of control, disappearing into the planet's stormy upper atmosphere. As news of Blackwell's defeat spread, a palpable sense of relief washed over the planet. The Joint Council's popularity soared among both humans and Tarians, their successful handling of the crisis cementing their legitimacy. Seizing the moment, Ricky called for an emergency session of the council. "We have an opportunity here," he said, looking around at the assembled leaders. "A chance to build something truly remarkable. I propose we establish a joint human-Katarian space exploration program, utilizing the ancient technology Dr. Vox and her team have discovered." The council chamber erupted in excited discussion. Queen Lyra's eyes shone with approval as she seconded the motion. Even Admiral Zax, usually so cautious, nodded his agreement. As the council began to hash out the details of this ambitious new project, Ricky allowed himself a moment of quiet satisfaction. Despite all the challenges they had faced, it seemed they were finally on the path to a truly united future. But fate had one more surprise in store. As Ricky was reviewing the initial proposals for the space program, an urgent alert came through from the long-range sensor array. A massive energy signature, unlike anything they had ever encountered, was rapidly approaching the Katarian system. Ricky's blood ran cold as he read the preliminary analysis. The entity, whatever it was clearly neither human nor Katarian in origin. As he shared the news with Queen Lyra and Admiral Zax, he could see the same mix of fear and excitement in their eyes that he felt himself. "We need to assemble a crisis response team immediately," Ricky said, his mind already racing with possibilities. This could be first contact with an entirely new species. As they rushed to prepare for this unprecedented encounter, Ricky couldn't help but feel a sense of irony. Just when they had finally achieved some measure of stability, The universe had thrown them another curveball. But looking at Queen Lyra, seeing the drive in her eyes, he felt a surge of confidence. Whatever this new entity might bring, diplomat or invader, friend or foe, they would face it together. The true test of their alliance lay ahead, and Ricky was determined to meet it head-on. The mysterious energy signature loomed ever closer to the Qatarian system, its approach sending ripples of anticipation and fear through the newly united human-Qatarian alliance. Ricky Richardson stood at the helm of the gleaming command center, a testament to their newfound cooperation. Holographic displays flickered around him, streaming real-time data from the long-range sensors. "Status report," Ricky called out, his voice steady despite the tension crackling in the air. Admiral Zax's deep baritone rumbled through the chamber. "Our combined fleet is in position, Governor. Human and Qatarian ships have formed a defensive perimeter around the planet." Queen Lyra stepped forward, her luminous eyes fixed on the main display. "The entity has decelerated significantly. It appears to be stopping." As if on cue, the massive energy signature came to a complete halt just beyond the orbit of the Qatarian homeworld's outermost moon. The command center fell silent, save for the soft hum of machinery and the quickened breathing of its occupants. Hours ticked by, each moment stretching into an eternity of anticipation. Ricky paced the length of the command center, his mind racing through potential scenarios. First contact protocols, defensive strategies, diplomatic approaches, all competed for dominance in his thoughts. Suddenly, a burst of activity erupted from the communication stations. "Governor!" a young Qatarian technician called out, her antennae twitching with excitement. "We're receiving a transmission." "On screen," Ricky ordered, moving to stand beside Queen Lyra and Admiral Zax. The main display flickered to life, revealing a message in multiple languages, including human and Qatarian. Ricky's eyes widened as he read the contents aloud. "Greetings, citizens of the Human-Qatarian Alliance. We are the Zephyrians, travelers from a distant sector of the galaxy. We come in peace, seeking knowledge and exchange. Your unique alliance has piqued our interest, and we request a face-to-face meeting to discuss further." The command center erupted in a flurry of activity as officials and advisors debated the appropriate response. Ricky turned to Queen Lyra and Admiral Zax, his expression a mix of excitement and caution. "What do you think?" he asked, his voice low. Queen Lyra's eyes gleamed with curiosity. "This could be an unprecedented opportunity for our people, Ricky. We must seize it." Admiral Zax nodded reluctantly. "I agree, though we should proceed with caution. We know nothing of these Zephyrians or their true intentions." Ricky weighed their words carefully before making his decision. "Prepare a delegation," he announced to the room. "We'll accept their invitation." Within hours, a carefully selected team was assembled. Ricky, Queen Lyra, and Dr. Alara Vox formed the core of the group, accompanied by a mix of human and Qatarian scientists and diplomats. They boarded a sleek shuttle, a product of their combined technological prowess, and set course for the Zephyrian vessel. As they approached the alien ship, its sheer scale became apparent. The city-sized craft dwarfed their shuttle, its hull shimmering with an otherworldly iridescence. "By the stars," Dr. Vox breathed, her face pressed against the viewport. "Their technology is light years beyond our own." The shuttle glided into a cavernous docking bay, guided by an unseen force. As the delegation disembarked, they found themselves in an environment that defied comprehension. Gravity seemed to shift and flow around them, while holographic displays danced in response to their very thoughts. A figure approached, towering over even the tallest members of the delegation. Its form was vaguely humanoid, but with an ethereal quality that made it difficult to focus on any one feature. "Welcome," the being's voice resonated in their minds. "I am Zalthor, leader of this Zephyrian expedition. We are pleased to make your acquaintance." Ricky stepped forward, bowing slightly. "We are honored by your invitation, Zalthor. I am Governor Ricky Richardson, and this is Queen Lyra of the Qatarians." Zalthor led them through winding corridors that seemed to defy the laws of physics. As they walked, the Zephyrian leader explained their mission of galactic exploration and cultural exchange. "We have observed many civilizations," Zalthor said, "but your alliance is unique. Two species, once at war, now united. It is promising. They arrived at a vast chamber, its ceiling a perfect recreation of the starfield outside. Here, the delegation presented their own history and recent developments. Dr. Vox shared her findings from the ancient Katarian outpost, drawing excited murmurs from the Zephyrians present. This technology, Zalthor mused, we have encountered similar artifacts in our travels. Perhaps we could assist you in unlocking its secrets. As the meeting progressed, Zalthor made an unexpected proposal. We invite your alliance to join the Cosmic Concordat, a federation of advanced civilizations dedicated to peace and progress. Ricky and Queen Lyra exchanged glances, their minds reeling at the implications. Before they could respond, alarms blared throughout the ship, startling everyone present. Zalthor's form shimmered with agitation. We are detecting a large fleet entering the system at high velocity. They are not friendly. Holographic displays materialized, showing a swarm of ominous vessels rapidly approaching. Zalthor's voice took on a grave tone. The Void Collective. They have pursued us across the galaxy, seeking our technology. Now they threaten your world as well. Ricky's mind raced, quickly grasping the gravity of the situation. He turned to Queen Lyra and Admiral Zax, who had joined them via holographic link. We need to mobilize every ship we have, Ricky said, his voice firm. This isn't just about protecting our world anymore. It's about proving ourselves worthy of a place in this galactic community. Queen Lyra nodded, her eyes blazing with dedication. Agreed. We will show these Void Collective the true strength of our alliance. As the delegation rushed back to their shuttle, Ricky's mind was already formulating strategies. They had to coordinate their forces, integrate the Zephyrians into their defense plans, and prepare for a battle unlike any they had faced before. The shuttle sped back towards the Katarian homeworld, the looming shapes of the Void Collective fleet growing larger by the moment. Ricky knew that the next few hours would determine not just the fate of their alliance, but potentially the balance of power in this sector of the galaxy. As they approached the planet, the combined human Katarian fleet came into view, a testament to their newfound unity. Ricky felt a surge of pride, tempered by the weight of responsibility. All ships, battle stations, Admiral Zax's voice boomed over the comms. Prepare to engage the enemy. The vastness of space erupted into chaos as the first salvos were fired. Ricky watched from the command shuttle, coordinating with Queen Lyra and Admiral Zax as they directed their forces against the technologically superior foe. Energy beams lanced across the void, shields flared and failed, and explosions blossomed in the silent expanse of space. The battle had begun, and with it, the true test of the human Katarian alliance. Alliance had truly begun. The Void Collective's ships, vast and ominous, filled the view screens as they bore down on the Katarian homeworld. Ricky's mind raced as he assessed their options. The combined human Katarian fleet, while impressive, was clearly outmatched by the advanced technology of their adversaries. They needed an edge, something unexpected that could turn the tide of battle. As if reading his thoughts, Dr. Alara Vox's voice crackled over the comms. Governor, I have an idea. The ancient Katarian technology we discovered, with the Zephyrians' help, we might be able to use it to create a planetary shield. Ricky exchanged glances with Queen Lyra, seeing his own mix of hope and desperation reflected in her eyes. Do it, he commanded. Admiral Zax, buy us as much time as you can. The next hours passed in a blur of frantic activity. As the human Katarian fleet engaged the outer edges of the Void Collective's armada, Dr. Vox and a team of scientists worked tirelessly to integrate the ancient Katarian technology with Zephyrian insights. Ricky paced the bridge of the flagship, coordinating the defense with Queen Lyra at his side. The view screens showed a kaleidoscope of destruction as energy weapons lanced across space, finding their marks with devastating precision. Shield status? Ricky called out, his voice tight with tension. A Tarian technician responded, her antennae quivering. Online in 3, 2, 1. A shimmering dome of energy blossomed around the planet, extending to encompass the Zephyrian ship as well. The timing couldn't have been better. Moments later, the full fury of the Void Collective's assault crashed against the barrier. Ricky allowed himself a moment of relief before refocusing on the task at hand. All ships, form up. Prepare to counterattack. The human Qatarian fleet moved with practiced precision, a testament to their months of joint training. Human fighters darted between the lumbering Void Collective ships, their superior maneuverability allowing them to slip past enemy defenses and deliver precision strikes. Meanwhile, Qatarian cruisers unleashed salvos of energy weapons, their firepower amplified by technologies shared in the wake of their alliance. The space around them lit up with explosions as shields failed and hulls ruptured. From the Zephyrian ship came an invisible assault, complex algorithms that jammed the Void Collective's communications, sowing chaos in their formations. Ships collided, firing arcs went wild, and coordinated attacks fell apart. Despite their initial success, Ricky could see the battle was far from won. The shield, while holding, flickered ominously under the constant barrage. Casualty reports streamed in from both human and Tarian ships. "We need something more," Queen Lyra said, her eyes fixed on the tactical display. "Something that can end this decisively." As if in answer to her words, Dr. Vox's face appeared on a nearby screen. "Governor, Your Majesty, we've done it. We've weaponized the ancient technology into a massive EMP device. It should be capable of disabling the entire Void Collective fleet." Ricky's heart leaped, then sank as he processed the implications. "But using it would knock out our defenses too, wouldn't it?" Dr. Vox nodded grimly. "I'm afraid so. We'd be vulnerable until we could get systems back online." Ricky shared a long look with Queen Lyra. In that moment, a plan formed between them without a word being spoken. "We'll do it," Ricky said. "But not from here. Prep a strike team. We're taking the fight to them." Within minutes, a shuttle launched from the flagship, carrying Ricky, Queen Lyra, and a hand-picked team of human and Qatarian special forces. They weaved through the chaos of battle, aiming for the heart of the Void Collective fleet, their massive command ship. Using the confusion caused by the Zephyrian jamming, they managed to slip into a secondary hangar. The moment they touched down, the strike team erupted into action. Ricky and Lyra moved in perfect sync, covering each other as they fought their way through the alien vessel. Human and Tarian soldiers worked seamlessly together, their diverse skills complementing each other in the heat of battle. They encountered fierce resistance. The Void Collective's warriors were unlike anything they had faced before. Humanoid in shape, but with a fluidity to their movements that seemed almost unnatural, they wielded energy weapons that could cut through armor like paper. Despite the odds, the strike team pressed on. Ricky felt a surge of pride as he watched humans and Qatarians fighting side by side, trust evident in every coordinated move. This, he realized, was the true strength of their alliance. After what felt like hours of intense combat, they reached the ship's core, a massive chamber pulsing with otherworldly energy. Dr. Vox's voice guided them through the process of planting the EMP device. "All friendly ships, this is Governor Richardson," Ricky transmitted as Queen Lyra activated the device. "Fall back immediately. I repeat, fall back." They barely made it back to their shuttle as the EMP detonated. A wave of energy rippled out from the command ship, engulfing the entire battlefield. Ship after ship went dark, weapons fell silent, and for a moment, space itself seemed to hold its breath. As systems slowly came back online, Ricky and Lyra returned to a scene of victory. The Void Collective fleet hung motionless in space, disabled and defenseless. The human-Qatarian alliance had done the impossible. They had defeated a vastly superior force through unity, ingenuity, and sheer dedication. In the days that followed, the Qatarian system buzzed with activity. Cleanup operations were underway, diplomatic channels were open with the Zephyrians, and preparations were being made for a monumental ceremony. Ricky stood before a sea of faces, human, Qatarian, and Zephyrian. Queen Lyra was at his side, radiant in her formal regalia. Zalthor towered behind them, a living embodiment of the new frontier they were about to enter. "Today," Ricky began, his voice carrying across the assembly and to the billions watching the broadcast across two worlds, "we take our place among the stars."
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.